Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Money Talks, an exclusive conversation with some of the most brilliant minds in business, entrepreneurship, and finance. Today, we are in Kuala Lumpur once again, and this Money Talk is extremely special because I have found, finally, a kindred spirit, somebody that I can speak to on an equal level that resonates and understands my philosophies, but he's many years ahead of me in his career, his entrepreneurial endeavors, but his foresight, his decision-making is quite immaculate and stupendous, to say the least. Today, I am with Satya Narjadin, a serial entrepreneur with over $700 million in sales and an absolute boss with over 55 countries traveled, a family man, and an individual that I highly respect. So without further ado,
thank you, brother. Nice to meet you again.
Satya, it's good to see you. I met you in California.
That's right.
Steve Tan invited me out to come hang out with the crew, so I was able to have a good time, get to know a little bit about you, and I was really intrigued because you're not a man of social media, even though you had a little profile, it's more like for your family or friends. So I really wanted to take some time and be able to dive into your mind,
Sure.
dive into your story as a student, and people just happen to have the benefit of listening to you as well. I want to take it back to kind of like your origin. I know you come from a family that, had their own company and things of this nature, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you had everything served to you on a silver platter. That's obviously many times a misconception, just because somebody in your family runs a business doesn't mean that they support you or that they're going to lay that up for you. So give me a little bit of introduction into your entrepreneurial journey, brother.
Well, basically, like Luke was saying, I started in a family business, right? So I graduated from university in the US, came back to help in a family business, absolutely hated it, simply because I was the youngest of three brothers, right? And I don't know whether you know how patriarchal Chinese families are in terms of the business structure and family structure.
The firstborn gets everything?
Pretty much, yeah. So not just everything, but all the responsibility goes to the firstborn also, right? And so the hierarchy is kind of set. So I used to laugh because business meetings became more like family meetings because everyone in my family is involved. And because I have my father, my mother, two older brothers, and then me, so any decision that I make was just about the family dog. So, it's...
You were the black sheep, always the last decision.
Right.
It didn't matter what your expertise were. The value of your opinion on the ladder didn't really...
Absolutely. Seniority. And it was absolutely, how do I say this now? I mean, I absolutely hated it, and I just couldn't wait to get out. So the opportunity kind of presented itself around 2003, 2004. My father decided to purchase a land in Singapore, industrial property. He was kind of like tucked into it by friends of his and a big real estate property agent. And
they finessed him.
Yeah.
They finessed him into it.
Basically,
yeah.
Right? And told him that, these are the kind of returns that you're going to get if you build something like this over there. And, 3 months later, after he bought it and he was ready to go build it, those guys would say, okay, sorry.
They rug pulled him.
Yeah.
They rug pulled the man.
Exactly. They rug pulled him. Right. And so my father was looking at quite a big loss for that particular piece of property. And so I told him, I'm like, hey, I'm not happy in Indonesia. Why don't you just send me over to Singapore and let me just deal with this and see whether I can at least turn it around and make something out of it. So we were looking at quite a significant loss, maybe 30% loss from our initial investment. But
right away,
instantly, right? Because those guys were saying that, we can't build this anymore. It's not lucrative anymore. So I started fact-finding. I started to try to find out how to revive this. And instead of losing $3 million, so I turned it around. I actually made a few $1 million out of that.
Amazing.
And then I just basically rolled that into a new development and then rolled it. And, about 15 years later from when we started and when I got out of Singapore from the real estate property, property development market, we kind of sold about $700 million worth of Singapore property.
Amazing. So here you are. What age are you when you talk to your dad about, hey, I want to kind of like take over the this real estate property?
I was early 30s. Yeah.
So what was your knowledge base in this niche? Nothing.
Zero. Yeah, zero. I had a computer science background, I had a finance background. I've got 2 minors, but that's it, right? Nothing real estate related. And it's really not rocket science. Like, I mean, I think all businesses, basically, if you really boil down to it, it's a matter of cash flows. And in this particular case, with regards to real estate, it's definitely about cash flow because you have the construction curve and you have the sales curve. And if you kind of don't hit or you kind of let them intersect, then you have to put in more money.
Yeah.
And so basically, all you have to do is continuously track all your cash flows properly, and you should be able to do it. The only problem with real estate, of course, is because the money's involved are getting larger and larger. And if your cash flows, one bad project can wipe out all the profits from your previous 10 projects. Done.
So tell me a little bit about that. So you make $4 million profit on the first flip, but a lot of entrepreneurs, they make the first $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, even if it's profit pooled or shared with your initial investors, whatever it may be. You still had a take home.
Yep.
What was your philosophy there of, hey, I'm going to roll this over versus I'm going to go spend it. I'm going to go flex.
Exactly.
What was the mentality there?
Well, definitely rolling over, right? I mean, of course, basically my philosophy is very simple. I mean, yes, you can enjoy the fruits of your labor, so to speak, but make sure that it's only a small portion of it, because the rest, if you're really passionate about something and you're really interested in making it grow bigger, then you got to plow it back in. You got to continue learning it. You have to continue doing something that you're passionate about and try to make it bigger. It's only when the passion gets out of it, then that's when you want to get out completely.
Is there a way to reignite the passion, or when you say passion, is this something that is a gut feeling, or how do you sense it?
Yeah, I think it's a gut feeling, number one, and number two is also you have to be also aware of the environment, right, that you're in. In Singapore, when we first came in, that particular property development, which is industrial property development, it's like the ugly stepchild. Nobody wanted to touch it at 10-foot pole. And that's when I felt that the opportunity was there because nobody was in there. But, towards the middle, as we were building bigger and larger projects, everybody started jumping in. They saw how much money, my investors were making, our company was making, and they decided to plow in. And it's really funny because, when they start plowing in is when I decide, I think it's time for us to get out. It's because of this herd mentality, I guess. And also I'm contrarian in nature. I don't like to follow the crowd. In fact, when people get in, it's when I get out. And when people get out, it's when I get in. Also the same thing when it comes to my investments. Yeah, not just in real estate property, but also in general.
Just in general. I'm the same way, which is why I think I resonate with you. I heard about how you crushed the bull run in 2017. You pulled out. You were telling all your homies, get out. Did you do the same in 2021? Did you have a good foresight there?
Basically, 2021 was I kind of got busy with life, so to speak, and I wasn't really into crypto that much. But I was telling those boys also, some of my friends who were into crypto to get out. Right around when I think it hit about 60K, right? Yeah, I think it was around 60K. Yeah.
So it's pretty much close to the top.
Close to the top.
Yeah, I got out at 55K, which wasn't as impressive. You 10% drop, but we were talking in the back, and you said it's not that difficult. Yeah. I have a certain principle. What was that principle that you utilized? The ant principle, the auntie principle.
Yeah, the auntie principle. It's so funny, right? Because I found this on the first run, the first time in the first bull run of Bitcoin. The first Bitcoin bull run was like, when the older folks, like your grandmas or your older aunties start talking about something.
Boomers, yeah.
Yeah, the boomers, really, yeah. It's time for you to get out. It's basically what it is. Because if it is so ubiquitous, it's like everybody knows, everybody talks about it, that means it's an overbought territory for sure.
And usually these waves of information, if you understand how liquidity moves, it's all by design. So the press articles are by design. That's right. The information is by design. The tweets are by design. The news sections are by design. Why? Because once you inform the public, now the exit liquidity comes in for the initial investors to be able to cash out. So yeah, I saw a lot of people make a ton of money but lose it all. Mm-hmm. And then on the other spectrum, I saw a lot of people that were able to make money but not be able to preserve their wealth. And one of the mottos, the motto of Capital Club, is create, multiply, and preserve. So there's a mindset of how to create money, how to multiply the money, which you talk about cash flow, preserving it. And then finally is how to preserve your cash flow. I want to talk about, you make your first flip with the real estate, you turn it into a profit. That's a $6 million deal or something of this nature. What's the second one? What's the gap between the first and the second?
So the first was an $18 million project, because I think in terms of real estate, I think the scale's a little bit larger, right? So I flipped that and started doing a $30 million project, which is slightly larger. And when that sold out very quickly, I just flipped it and decided, hey, look, let's try to go for a big one. And we ended up doing a $260 million project. That was
amazing.
Yeah. So basically, if you have big conviction and you know that the market condition is right, go all in. It's basically what it is. It's in a way, whether you can succeed or not is, of course, it's a matter of good luck. It's a matter of being prepared. But at the same time, if you don't take the bull by the horn, so to speak, it's not going to go anywhere.
How important is positioning in order to spot opportunity? Because I see a lot of people running from point A to point B, shiny object. There's no pause, reflection.
That's right.
Let me observe the market. Let me see what's going on. In your opinion, how important is this idea of pausing to reflect, to be able to look at the landscape per se?
Extremely important. Yeah, absolutely right. Look, basically, you just have to pause and reflect as to, whether the market conditions that has set you up right now is still present. And then if it is, then continue being in it. If the market has moved for whatever reason, being regulatory, government intervention, or what have you, time to get out. It's basically what it is. A lot of people make the mistake, a lot of entrepreneurs actually also make the mistake of continually riding that same boat all the way up. Yeah, the same wave, even as it's crashing down. So
do you think that has to do with an emotional attachment to the niche? Do you think it has to do with an identity attached to, hey, I'm a real estate developer, or hey, I'm a person that does e-com, I'm this type of person? Because I've seen it in my life where, for example, I started in e-commerce, and as soon as I transitioned out of e-commerce, started doing some consulting, they're like, no, but he's the e-commerce guy. And it's like, well, then I started doing crypto. What, weren't you the e-commerce guy? How can you be the crypto guy? And it's this idea of riding the waves, because in my opinion, and maybe you agree with me, it's you want to be playing along with the trend as opposed to against the trend.
That's right.
So when you're building this fortune inside this real estate empire that you built, how difficult was it for you to look at it from a third party perspective and not kind of attach your identity to it? Or did it come naturally to you?
It came a bit naturally to me because I've never been enamored by labels, right? So you're absolutely right? So I was just as I was at that particular point in time when I started doing all my projects in Singapore, I was basically the shiny new object, right? Basically, I'm the one who was, this fresh guy came in, disrupting the market. But then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm also conscious of the fact that for every fresh guy that comes in, there'll be another fresher guy that comes in to this. So I'll be old news in about 5 years' time. And so basically, that makes me have the mindset of, okay, let's not be enamored by what you do, right? And let's not be shoeboxed in a certain identity that you built yourself, right? And you live and die by that sort, so to speak. I've never been that. So to me, any entrepreneur venture that I go into, I have a passion for it, but I don't live and die by that singular passion, because I have other things that I love and care about. Yeah. So
one of them I know is travel.
Yes.
Favorite country?
Oh, I actually love South America, right? I've actually visited Argentina once, and I absolutely loved it. I traveled, all the way up north, right down to the border of Brazil, where Iguazu Falls is, right, and all the way down to Patagonia.
Oh, so you did the whole thing?
I did the whole thing. Yeah, so absolutely loved it. I wish I can go back there again. It's a little bit difficult to go to Argentina for me. Now it's a little bit easier, but but I loved it. I've America. I love the U.S. Not so much the politics, but the people. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I've been to so many states within the U.S. It's amazing.
How important was travel to your worldview?
Very much so. I think I've never been. I think meeting new people, learning about new cultures, open up your eyes as to the similarities as well as the differences between people.
Yeah.
Right. By the same token, also you understand where your position is, so to speak. Right. Because to me, everything is relative. Right. If you think you're successful, there are other people who are more successful than you. If you think you're smart, there are other people who are smarter than you. And of course, people who are less successful and dumber than you are. But this is just
In the spectrum.
In a spectrum. There you go. And so, you have to be comfortable with where you are, so to speak, right? And be comfortable as we were talking about authenticity just now. Be comfortable in your genuine self.
How, in your opinion, have you developed the sense of authenticity where you've defined what entrepreneurship means for you, where you've defined what success means to you, and not allowing other people's definitions of what it means to be successful or things that people have told you, hey, in order for you to be successful, this is what you need to have.
Yeah. So,
how have you developed that kind of thesis or philosophy?
Well, basically, again, like I said, I think traveling helps, right? Because again, you see the full spectrum of life, so to speak, right? I mean, I come from a fairly poor country, in Indonesia, and but I've seen things, and I feel privileged to see.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, like, every time you go down there, you learn something new, and you learn not to take yourself too seriously, right? You learn not to, how do I say it, to be, oh, I'm so and so, therefore I must be this and this. No, because at the end of the day, it's like simple things, like being with family brings me so much pleasure. And the thing about it is, like, if you really boil down to the details, and for me, entrepreneurship is just a means to a lifestyle.
Yes.
that I enjoy. About what do I enjoy? I enjoy being with my loved ones. I enjoy being friends with like you guys, right? And so basically, that's how I keep myself grounded, and my worldview changes simply because, it's not tied down to one identity simply because, I want to be surrounded by the people that I love.
Mm.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's oftentimes common in entrepreneurship where one can become isolated, whether it's through your work or whether it's through the identity, and it's easy to neglect the essentials and the basics that once you don't have them, you realize how important they were. And I often tell people, I say, the paradox of life is that many times we give up the things that are replaceable for the things that are irreplaceable.
Absolutely.
So we'll get the money, which we can always make more money. You can build another business, you can get another nice car, you can have another nice home. And we replace these things for things that are irreplaceable, like family, like peace of mind.
That's right.
Like a good relationship, like children.
Yeah,
like
right.
you have a beautiful children, which is something that I think you're extremely passionate about. We were talking about it, and you're like, this invigorates me. This is kind of a new kind of a career or a new approach that I'm taking towards. I want to talk a little bit about parenthood. How are you managing parenthood and business? Because you're still kind of playing both dynamics. I don't know what it's like to be a parent. It's very far down my lane. But it's basically two CEO roles. Like, you're running a full-time family. You need to make sure your children are developed. Because I know there's going to be people watching that have kids. And then you also have your company. And then you also have investments or things that you're kind of doing in the business world. How do you marry both?
So basically, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a question of juggling, right? And it's a question of time management and making time. It's essentially what it is, right? Because I think everybody knows you only have 24 hours a day. And it's how you divide it up, right? Rightly, if this is something that you really care about and you need to put, food on the table, then of course you have to worry about doing business or making money to make sure there's food on the table. I've been fortunate enough to be in a state where I don't really have to worry about that too much anymore. And so I have basically now tried to devote as much time as possible to my other endeavors, which is basically to being a better husband and being a better father to my child. Yeah.
Let me ask you what being a better father is in the context of understanding the school system. Of understanding the programming. This is where we're going to get a little bit deeper.
Sure.
And understanding kind of where the government or the system kind of begins to indoctrinate culture. And obviously you, now that you're financially free, understanding these things, how are you training up your children to think or operate differently than the masses?
Right. I think this was something that we talked about previously also. I think one of the biggest things that have changed between formal education back then and the future of education moving forward is this whole concept about resiliency, this whole concept about being flexible, right? It used to be where you have like a X amount of knowledge base that you have to learn, and it's usually mainly rote learning, right? You do well in that, and then they'll promote you to, from primary school to secondary school, and then from there they promote you to tertiary, and so on and so forth, right? But you have to hit a grade each and every time. I think that model to me is a little bit outdated, honestly, because it's lifelong learning now.
Yes.
It's basically what it is. You cannot just stop and think, okay, so I have a master.
It can't be attached to the title, just like
exactly.
this. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Right. I mean, I've talking about education. I finished 2 degrees, 2 minors, and an MBA. But before I was even 23 years old, right? But did I stop there? No. I continuously learn. I continuously keep myself. I read a lot. I think my friends know I spend at least 3 to 4 hours every day just reading.
Wow.
Reading on stuff, right? Reading about big market trends, geopolitics, what the future holds. Also, I'm a very keen student of history, right? And basically all of this, I kind of like meld it together and try to figure out where we're heading to next, because it's a complex world out there, right? And I need to be to make sure that my children are equipped to handle the world, not just today, but in 20 years' time, in 25 years' time, right? When I'm no longer around, for example, right? So what are the basic tenets, or what are the basic characteristics that they must have to face the future? One of them is resiliency, and also the ability to want to continue to learn, right? Not just in the orthodox method, but also think outside the box, right? Learn to question why.
Yes.
Don't just listen to dogma. I have never been, I got thrown out. It's a true story. I used to be in Boys Brigade. I don't know whether you have Boys Brigade.
It's like Boy Scouts, yeah.
Yeah, it's Boy Scouts, but with more like a Christianity kind of slant to it, right? Because we have to attend church service on Sunday and stuff like that. I got thrown out of the Boys Brigade very, very early, simply because I was just questioning, right? And so I thought that that was one of the biggest lessons for me. It's like, hey, look, if authoritative figure can't give me the answers, right, then I will have to search for it on my own.
Yes.
Right. And, I certainly don't want to listen to dogma. It's because you see a lot of authoritative figure doing something, saying something, but doing something else, right? So to me, I teach that to my children also, right? If I have to ask you to do something, I have to explain why I'm asking you to do something, right? It's not just dogma. It's not like, okay, you have to do what I tell you to do, right? Because it's dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because of this.
And going through that process of logic, which I think is extremely important.
Extremely important logic, yeah.
So moving on to talk a little bit about what you study and the fact that you read. You said you spend 3-4 hours reading. The young generation, they shit on this idea of reading because they have a terrible notion of what education actually is. To them, education is this mental model that they've been brought up in. So they disdain education when in fact what they've been put through is indoctrination.
That's correct.
So, for example, I was talking to a mathematician. He's like, you can't study math as a form of problem solving. You need to study it as a language.
That's right.
You need to be able to perceive things differently. And Leonardo da Vinci has a very interesting quote, a very famous quote. He says, to develop a complete mind, you must study the science of art and the art of science. You must learn to see things for what they are. And once I heard that, I was like, okay, I need to develop a complete mind, not by being a person that's niched in one thing and one identity, but I need to be a jack of all trades.
That's right.
And oftentimes we hear this quote, jack of all trades, master of none. But the quote continues, master of one is like master of none. So if you're single laned, you're basically useless in a world that's, like you said, moving super dynamic. So I like to say jack of all trades, master of life. in your opinion, how has or talk to me a little bit about like the education that you go through. Why do you select a specific book, or what intrigues you? I know you talk about geopolitics, modern stuff, but then you also mix it with history. Tell me a little about this concoction that's putting you ahead of everybody.
Well, I wouldn't say putting it ahead of everybody, but
I mean, bro, you got out of Bitcoin. You told people get out at 60K. That's pretty much ahead of most people, bro.
Yeah, but it's really funny because, like I said, I'm a keen student of history, right? But I don't use it as how do I say it, as to live in the past, so to speak. But to learn from the past to predict the future. And, essentially, I mean, if you talk about a pandemic, for example, right? If you really see what has happened in the past, in history, you will know that there's a big pandemic every 100 years.
Yes, the cycle.
The cycle. And we were due one, right? In 2019, 2020, we were due one. And basically, so what you do when it actually hits, you see what happened in the last one, and you see the patterns involved, and you see how the stock market does. You see, of course, different variables have come in, but what you want to do is you want to anticipate. You want to learn from what has happened, and then moving forward, what you think is, whether the conditions are still the same, and whether, so you should use that and try to go in, how do I say it, predict, quote unquote, the future.
There's this book called The Fourth Turning that talks about the same exact thing that you're talking about, how just like there's seasons in the world, there's also seasons when it comes to human behavior and how things operate. That's right. In your opinion, is this manufactured history cycles, or is this natural history cycles that occur?
I think it's natural history cycles. Of course, by and large, humans have started to go and affect how the natural cycles actually occur, right? Because there's a lot of human activity has disrupted, so to speak, the natural cycle of things. Yes, but and you're talking about history again. Well, we're at this particular subject. I think you and I know that history is always written by the winners.
Yes,
right. So I also like to delve into what history is like for the losers, right? To get a better perspective of how they view things. And so instead of being indoctrinated by the so-called narrative that, governments and the victors want you to learn, you also read about what other people are saying, and basically try not to pigeonhole yourself, or try not to be boxed into a particular mindset is basically what it is. Be open to suggestions. Don't delve too much into conspiracy theory, right? Because I think you run into a lot of issues if you just jump into the rabbit hole. But keep an open mind, right? Of all things, be logical in nature. Be analytical and be logical. And you'll find that a lot of you can get out of the so-called white noise. You can basically just tune out all the white noise and actually pinpoint exactly what is happening once you really boil down to the basics and you analyze all with logic. Yeah, this is.
I mean, yeah, you look at, for example, the market crash of 1912. Then you look at the fact that world wars were introduced, and then you look at the fact that there was a pandemic introduced, the Spanish flu, things of this nature. And now you look at the same thing, right? Maybe the patterns are a little bit different, but you see market crash, then you see pandemic, then you see Ukraine war, and you see all these things playing together. In some way, shape, or form, may feel orchestrated, but there is natural cycles that do occur. And like you said, it's being able to anticipate these things, which require the ability to step back.
That's right.
And ask, to me, what you said is the most important question: why?
Yeah.
Why? Asking why, continuously why. Not only asking why when it comes to like exterior factors, but you asked me a question when it came to, we were talking about the motto, Capital Clement, I talked about my intense desire for people to be their authentic self. And you said the problem with that, or the potential danger with that, is most people don't know what their authentic self is. How do you ask why towards your own actions? How do you diagnose whether you're abiding by somebody else's worldview, belief systems, versus developing your own train of thought?
Right. Well, of course, like I said, right, I think the one of the what I like to do is basically to keep an open mind about a lot of things, right? Don't just listen to the hype. Don't just listen to what people are saying, what mass media is saying, right? Even when you talk about geopolitics, for example, who are writing all the articles, for example, like
who owns the news outlets?
That's right. Who owns the news outlets? And look at the bent, look at all the different things, and see for yourself. Really, again, stay above the fray. Don't get tied up to the emotions of the actual story, but look at it from a perspective of like, is this really what is happening on the ground, right? And it's interesting, right? Because a lot of people bash about, say, China, for example. A lot of Western media will say bash on China, but you look at what China has done. And just from a holistic point of view, just from a sit back and take a look at it, right? What they've done is near miraculous, right? China in 60, 70 years ago, they have this huge poverty issue, right? Massive poverty issue. And basically what they've done over the last 50, 60 years is pull 600 million people out of poverty, right, into what we call middle class kind of life. Yes, there are things that they have to give up. There are some personal freedoms, certain freedoms that they have to give out and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, 600 million people
is a lot.
It's a lot of people. Exactly. So yeah, let's not sneeze on that.
And then on the same time, you can look at the Western side, which they'll go and be like, "Hey, Iraq needs freedom," and they'll just bomb 1 million people.
There you go.
So you need to be able to, like you said, be a multinational person. You can't be a person that is per se patriotic towards one flag, which is why I think you and I resonate. You're like, you know what? I'm not a citizen of this country. I'm not a citizen of that country. I'm a citizen of the world.
That's right.
And I myself, I've been to 54 countries. One of my goals is to actually travel to every country in the world. That's kind of one of the things on my hierarchy list of priorities, simply because I want to continue being a student of life. And a student of life, it requires humility.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I sense it with you, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Exactly.
But there is a certain beauty to that, because in that feeling of not knowing anything, you lose the responsibility of having to act like you know something. That's right. that you are something.
Yeah.
So it's in your insignificance that you actually find some sort of value or freedom to enjoy life. And my entire objective is, as people endeavor into entrepreneurship, as they find success, as they make money, is to not lose the reason why they started doing it, which was to put food on the table.
That's right.
To be able to go out with my friends. Mm-hmm. And you go from being a slave of the cubicle and the fluorescent lights to being a slave of your business, or to being a slave of the P&Ls, or to being a slave of, and you have to always check yourself, and consistently, always and forever, be humble enough to recognize that you don't know anything.
Absolutely, right. And I think that the so-called theory of relativity, not Einstein theory, my own relativity theory, it's the same,
a good one,
right? It's basically everybody is, it's relative, right? Where you are, you might be rich, but it's relative. You're relatively poor compared to, say, Elon Musk, right? But you're definitely rich compared to, say, some poor, orphan in Africa, right? It's the whole scale of relativity. People always say, oh, you must be a very successful entrepreneur because you sold, that many hundreds of millions of property. I like to joke with friends of mine, right? I've got a very good friend who's also in real estate in Singapore, right? I used to joke that his net profit is my turnover.
Yeah.
Right? And his turnover is another big company, one of the largest companies in Singapore called CapitaLand. It's his turnover is CapitaLand's net profit. So in the big scheme of things, yes, I might be successful, right? But I'm like a little tick in, the lion.
And it kind of has to do also with where you're looking in the spectrum, because most people, they look at Elon or they look at an ultra successful entrepreneur, but they only look at the things that they're missing from what that person has, instead of what is this person missing that I do have? So for example, does this individual wake up with peace of mind?
Bingo. Yeah.
Is this individual loved? Or is this individual feel cherished and important, or do they live under stress? And it's like, based off of your hierarchy of priorities in life and what you want, you also have to evaluate where you are in the spectrum. And gratitude, I think, is where it comes in, to be like, I could be on this side, but simultaneously being on this side of the spectrum could be just as bad.
That's right.
So it's finding that balance. And I think that's what I've come to realize about entrepreneurship, bro, is entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. It's not a career path. I very much feel like a pirate, not in the pirates in the sense of like, I'm out here like boarding ships and like stealing, but this freedom lifestyle.
That's
like
right.
You're not bound to a flag. You're not bound to a location, but you're a nomad. You're exploring, you're finding your treasure, you're finding your loot, you're kind of doing your own thing, you're free flow. And I found a lot of enjoyment in that sense of entrepreneurship. And I know it's different for a lot of people, but I think that the balance is super key.
That's right.
How important has finding and retaining a supportive spouse been in like your mental stability when it comes to business? Because dude, it can easily go south. You can easily be with the wrong person and it fucks everything up. So tell me a little bit about how you handle kind of that dynamic without going super into detail. How do you handle that dynamic of relationship, the empowerment of making sure that you still have time for your personal relationship while still supporting, your business endeavors and your entrepreneurial like spirit?
Well, we definitely do this previously also, but what we talked about was, like entrepreneurship for me is a means to an end, right? It's like, it's providing food on the table, a shelter over my head, right? And basically, that's it. Once you've achieved all that, what do you want to do, right? You want to start working on interpersonal relationship. A lot of people spend so much time doing, for example, learning the life skills to become a successful entrepreneur. They never learn the life skills to become a successful partner to their wife, to their children.
Wow.
They forget about that, right? You put in 20,000 of hours at work. Do you put 20,000 hours of work in interpersonal relationship to try to, be a better person to not just, you as a successful entrepreneur, but also to the people that you love, the people that love you, right? People forget about that, and to me, it's something, like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be able to get into a position where I can now start to work on those other aspects that I have led previously. But it also, again, back to the point where the whole big scale of things, right? Once, how much money do you really need in this life to be?
How much money do you really need?
I don't know. I mean, like if
obviously, like, let's say I want to live a good life in your spectrum, I want to have a nice car. I want to have a nice house. I want to be able to have my retirement portfolio. I want to be able to invest. What is a number to you that you're like, hey, if you're an entrepreneur, you're making $100,000 a month. Obviously, cash flow is king. You talk about that, and being able to have cash flow income streams. What is a net worth in 2023 or in this kind of era that you should be aiming for to be like, okay, now I'm in a good place where my priorities can shift?
Right.
What, in your opinion?
Well, it really depends, obviously, on where you live.
For sure.
Yeah, because real estate, which is something that I used to do. It really depends. If you live in Singapore, then $1 million won't get you very far.
Yes.
But if you live, let's say, in Malaysia, for example, $1 million will get you much further than $1 million in Singapore will get you. All right. So it really all depends on that.
Let's say tier 1 countries.
Tier 1.
So we're talking U.S., Singapore.
Yeah.
Let's add a couple of European countries that are highly expensive. What is your opinion there?
For, let's say, if you live in New York, live in California, then it's gonna get really expensive. London, for example, Hong Kong, Singapore, all the tier 1 countries, Dubai, it's gonna get really expensive for you to live in a luxurious manner. But if you want to live in a comfortable manner without worrying too much about, what your neighbors are doing, what everybody else thinks about what success means, right? I don't think you really need that much, honestly. It really boils down to, whether you the place that you're in, it's comfortable, it's large enough for you, it's conducive for family. But do you really need a 10,000 square foot mansion?
Do you need 4 Bugattis in the parking lot?
Bingo. Right.
Correct. And oftentimes what I've come to realize is these things come from comparison.
That's right.
And I tell my people, I say, comparison is the killer of joy. Because you're comparing yourself, instead of comparing yourself to the person that has less, you always compare yourself with the person that has more. And it's in that fallacy that you're sitting in a beautiful home with people that love you, making money, and you're like, oh shit, it's not enough. It's not enough. When in reality, 5-10 years ago, you would have looked at the version of who you are today and been like, dude, this is the version that is success. That's right. And I think that it's that reality check that is extremely important.
Yeah, you shift your own goalposts. That's basically what it is, right? Once you've achieved that, you're just like, okay, what's next, right? And then you look at your neighbor and like, oh, he's got a bigger house, he's got a nicer car, I want that. You know, but then, you know, like you said, you don't stop and say, hey, look, 5 years ago, I would be so happy if I, you know, reach where I am right now. And I think that's basically it, right? You know, what is it about being the next Elon Musk that drives you towards that? I mean, you know, I think someone like Elon Musk must be, yes, I mean, he's got all his riches and everything. I think must also be very, very lonely, you know, to a certain extent, right? You see like half of the things people say about him are all negative. The other half is positive, but you really boil
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure to continue to be Elon Musk, right? I don't want that kind of pressure.
Yeah, I like to travel. I like to enjoy the good things of life, because at the end of the day, it's like you said, you know, you can be a big rat, but still in the rat race, and just be a bigger cog, but you're still a big cog in the same machine.
That's right.
What are some books that have foundationally impacted the way that you view the world?
Definitely anything by Malcolm Gladwell. I absolutely love him as an author, right? And he makes a lot of sense. He makes a lot of good observations as to how the world works, right? And how it's counterintuitive sometimes, the way we see things and the way it actually works. Definitely anything by Malcolm Gladwell, recommend, highly recommend. I also, again, books on history. Go into the internet, you know, learn about a lot of things that you, be skeptical is basically what it is, right? Don't believe everything that you hear. Don't believe everything that you see, because it's so easy to distort the facts by reading mass media, for example, right? Learn from a lot of, how do I say it, the bigger skeptics, right? I am a big fan of James Randi. He used to be an illusionist. But he's a very, very big skeptic about, you know, supernatural and all this, you know, causes and stuff like that. I'm a big fan. Even take opposing views, right? Yes, you might be...
It might be uncomfortable.
You might be uncomfortable, yeah. But what you do want to know, what you do want to learn is be... How do I say this? It's like be empathetic as to what the other side is thinking about.
Right. Like, don't be so dogmatic about one worldview that you neglect the other side of the ping pong table. And you're like, hey, maybe I do agree with some of the things that because I found like the similarities are so much more in unison than the differences.
That's right.
And I think that it's in the nuances that people get caught up, instead of being able to perceive things, like Miyamoto Musashi says you must be able to perceive things from a high view, from the mountaintop.
That's right.
So you can see things clearly.
That's right.
Because when you're down in the grassroots, all you can see is the grassroots. Like, all you can see is where you're at. But if you can take a higher view, and a higher view requires perspective.
That's right.
And perspective, you may agree, is acquired through understanding multiple perspectives, through understanding multiple worldviews. In personal development, what are some books or some trains of thought that have impacted you recently?
Personal development, let's see.
In personal development, once again, it being a wide spectrum, but things that have kind of developed your operating system on the human side, not on the business side, not on the history side, but on the, you know what, these are things that impact me personally.
It's, like I said, it's just quite, I mean, I read a whole lot of things, so I can't really pinpoint one particular author or one particular person or one particular philosopher that I adhere to. It's just a strange mishmash of all the things that I read about. And again, it all boils down to critical thinking.
Yes.
Right? All boils down to logic. And it all boils down to being skeptical about what exactly you read and what you're actually seeing online. We talked about this in social media now because especially now with the prevalence of social media, it has become an echo chamber, right? You only belong to the same things that the things that you want to listen.
Yeah, because it's the For You page is curated towards giving you more nonsense of the things that, oops, I clicked on this by accident.
That's right.
Now you're in the algo for this. And it just hits you and hits you and hits you and hits you and hits you. I have to do it oftentimes. I have to just hit mute or I have to hit like not interested, not interested, not interested. So curating that experience as well. And what's interesting, it's called a news feed.
Yeah.
Feed, aka you're being fed something.
That's right.
And when you're being fed something, it means that you're not going out and hunting for it.
Right.
So in order for you to be a full developed entrepreneur, you have to go and find the information as opposed to being fed. Because when you're fed, you're oftentimes in a farmhouse and you're going to go to slaughter. That's how I've always perceived it.
Yep.
So I'm in a perspective where very similar to you, I find pleasure in life through the small things, not neglecting them, not forgetting them. But talking a little bit about money, I want to go into that. I want to talk a little bit about cash flow. I want to talk a little bit more about business principles that building a multi-9-figure empire and being able to leave that and then redesign your life. What are some principles in business that you've adhered to that have allowed you to achieve success?
One of the biggest one is like there's no one path to success, right? I used to belong to entrepreneurs organization, right, where you see a lot of successful entrepreneurs in the same room, right? Hundreds, even thousands of entrepreneurs, and they all are successful in their own right because there's a minimum bar that you need to achieve before you can join EO. But the one thing that strikes me is like, despite the fact that all of them are successful, but they all reached it in multiple different ways. They all have different mindsets. They all have, different industries that they've gone into. Things that you might not even
know that exist. Yeah,
know exist, right? And so there's no one true way of success, so to speak, right? There's a multitude of ways to become successful. But the thing that struck me when I talk to these people, when I talk to other successful entrepreneurs, the one thing that continuously strikes me is like, number one, they will say resiliency, right? Determination. You fall down 15 times, you get up a 16th time, continue to plod on. Stubbornness, yes, by and large, but it's more the determination part. And also the thing about what we entrepreneurs like to say is we try to find a solution to a problem, right? If the problem doesn't exist, then
don't try to create one.
There you go. That's right. So in essence, we're trying to, most entrepreneurs go into a new business to try to solve an old problem, an existing problem. And that's how you get successful. Basically, is how it is to make sure that the existing problem, you provide a new solution to a problem that still exists. All right. And yeah.
Or even finding these problems that are going to be forever problems. Like,
that's right.
People will always need a place to live.
That's right.
If you are running industrial real estate, businesses will always need a place in order to warehouse or keep their stuff or be able to run their operations. A morgue, right? Or what is it? Well, the funeral homes. People are always dying.
That's right.
So guess what? Somebody's got to run that business.
That's right.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, many times they go for that shiny object. They go for like the next thing, as opposed to finding these evergreen niches and finding these transcendental problems and finding a creative way to introduce a solution to it. You talk a little bit about cash flow. You talked a little bit about a model there that you kind of utilize. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So cash flow to me is the king, right? It's the lifeblood of any business. It's basically what it is, right? You can build your business, but without cash flow, without the blood flowing through the business, and if you don't really know how to control it, you bleed out. It's basically what it is. And just like when you bleed out, what happens to your business? You die. Oh, it happens to your body, it also dies. So it's the same principle that I always keep in mind, because in a lot of ways, running a successful business means controlling your cash flows really, really tightly, making sure that you have enough money in not just for today, but in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, to pay your suppliers, to pay your employees, right? Always keep that in mind and never get into a position where, okay, you know what, let's just go into a huge negative cash flow. Yes, if you are, for example, a startup with,
some VC, some funding where you can burn cash.
right. But even now, as you can see, now that the easy money is over, right? What do the VCs are asking you to do? Make sure that you turn a profit. Make sure that you're operationally profit.
What's your monthly recurring revenue? What's your predictable income? What's your net positive cash flow? Yeah, these are questions that they weren't asking, but now since, like you said, money's getting tight, it's the questions that people are asking.
Because at the end of the day, it's basically what it is, right? If you keep continuously to burn cash, right, and yeah, you might be increasing your sales, but your bottom line, you're still not making any money, then something's got to give, right? And once the people stop providing you money to kind of like to sustain this particular vehicle, you're just gonna crash and burn again. Look at, for example, WeWork. What is WeWork? Honestly.
Crazy. It's multi-billion. I think they're worth, 250 million right now.
Yeah.
From stocks down like 90%, 95%. It's dead.
It's dead, right? And basically, what was it? Because it was never going to make a profit out of what they were trying to do, right? I mean, yes, it's the whole idea was
take short-term liabilities and figure out a way to turn it into some high long-term turnover. Wild.
Yeah. And that model actually has existed even before WeWork came in, right? It's registered, curated or offices that basically co-working spaces. They were the old co-working space. It was just not sexy, right? They didn't just couch it with like new technological terms just to make it more sexy, like AI, for example.
Correct.
Now everybody's piling into the AI space, but what exactly is AI? A lot of people don't know that, right? Deep machine learning. And this was a quote that resonated with me. Like, you underestimate what technology can bring you, or you overestimate what technology can bring you over the next 2 years, but you underestimate what technology can bring you over the next 10 years. The same technology, and it's the same thing. And AI, you'll probably see the same thing. In the next 2 years, you'll see a lot of hype over AI. You'll see a lot of companies that do well, but also a lot of companies that just crash and burn, simply because they went on this train and there was no substance to it. But at the same token, you will also clearly see in a few years' time who are the winners of this particular wave. And it might not be the same person that you're reading, it might not be the same company that you're reading about now. And that's usually what it is, right? I mean, even smartphones. Mobile phones. Who were the kings before Apple came in?
You had BlackBerry, you had a ton of Nokia, you had all these.
Ericsson, Nokia, BlackBerry, all right? Everybody was on BlackBerry.
Gone.
All gone.
You would have never assumed that these would have been dethroned.
Exactly. So yeah, again, you can't see the winners right now, right? But this whole new revolution, this AI, we've talked about it many years, right? And I think it's still at its infancy. But yes, it's going to disrupt a lot of industries. It's going to disrupt a lot of people's employment status. So then you just have to be prepared for it, right? Read about what are the industries that are going to be disrupted by AI, and don't be in that. Honestly, copywriters, your days are numbered.
Goodbye.
Yeah, even marketers, right? Graphic designers, right? There will always be a market for people with the real skills, but if you're,
I see white collar being replaced faster than the blue collar, and that's what people weren't talking about. People were talking about blue collar robots, but nobody was aware of software.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, bankers, lawyers. Yes. So what's gonna end up? We talked about this also. What's essentially what's gonna be left over those industries will be those people who actually have that personal touch, right? That really know how to build interpersonal relationship, because those can't be replaced by AI. Everything else, talk about, like, for example, a criminal case, right? The AI or the computer will be able to pass through millions and millions of old documents, millions and millions of cases that, that an ordinary person right there will not be able to have that kind of mental capacity.
Because you're dealing with human error, and when it comes to those things, they're so technical that we're going to start relying a lot on machines. There's a good side to it. There's a scary side.
Exactly, right. But as usual, with the scary side of it, it's like, AI is written by people at the end of the day, right? The programming language is actually designed by somebody, by a programmer, by a coder. And at the end of it, he or she will also put their own biases in it, all right? And it is going to be a big problem, how to weed out all the biases in all this big, deep machine learning, AI, that is apparent right now, even now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the most celebrated cases was even Apple's facial recognition, right, where they had problems recognizing different Oriental or Asian faces. Let's say Oriental is such an outwarded term there, but Chinese faces in particular, right? It was easy to like sister to be able to open up what do you call it?
Somebody else's phone, yeah.
Somebody's phone because the AI couldn't pick it up. Yeah, it's something like that. And also, like, I think there was also something about biases in black faces, right? I mean, African Americans also had the same issue, right? Because it was written mainly towards a white Caucasian audience, right? And so a lot of these biases will be put into all these AI structures, all these things that you see. Even when we talk about, AI medicine, for example, right? A lot of the research has only been done for typical white Caucasian males, right? Not even females, right? And so if you look at drug development and all that, it's mainly geared towards that. But, the microbiome, for example, what's happening inside your body is different between somebody who is white and Caucasian and somebody who is, a Singaporean Chinese, for example. Right, so all these biases, all this library of information needs to be, cataloged. And somebody needs to do it, and there's probably a lot of money involved in this kind of thing. Also, if you're the one to do it, right? And so these are the new fields of AI, new fields of technology, new fields of medicine that you can go into, not just follow the route of what has already happened before. So it's this kind of stuff, right? That I like to. One of the key philosophies that I like to always go back to was taught by my finance professor a long time ago. He likes to play what if games, right? And this was related to when I was studying finance, right? So he was saying that, okay, what happens if, for example, say Russia invades Ukraine? What happens, right? Then you have to play with all these what if games. He was basically teaching us, okay, read outside what is the document and try to figure out what's going to happen. So, for example, you look at Ukraine. What is Ukraine essentially? What is Ukraine's position in Europe, right? Ukraine has got one of the best fertile lands for agriculture in all of Europe. In fact, they're the breadbasket of Europe.
Their flag represents it. The bottom, the yellow represents the wheat and the sky and the blue represents the blue sky.
Absolutely, right. And so they're the breadbasket of Europe in essence. So if Russia invades it, so what happens if you are an investor? What do? Right? Then you play what if game. So if Russia invades Ukraine, then you will think that, okay, sanctions are going to put in Russia. So what do the Russians produce in abundance? Gas, natural gas, and oil.
Yeah.
Right? And also other minerals. But those two are in essence, okay, then you look at what does Russia supply, or who does Russia supply to? Western Europe. And so what do? Instead of going into the usual market, you start buying maybe LNG futures, you start buying into oil companies that actually will profit, that don't have a presence in maybe the North Atlantic, for example. The Norwegians buy into those companies that produce oil, or go into, for example, instead of using the pipeline, you have gas shipped to you from America, for example. Check out who the biggest owners of LNG.
You have to. I like it. I like that you said that, because the what ifs are extremely important. I was looking at a chart of the containers, the shipping containers. In 2020, the shipping containers, per shipping container, the price went up to $11,000.
That's right.
I remember e-commerce was getting extremely difficult, and the reason it was getting difficult was simply because the supply was so limited, because China's supply chain was kind of crunched up with lockdowns. but now a container is $1,500.
Yeah.
So you could have easily predicted that if you would have played the what if.
That's right. It's all these what if games, right? So again, back to Ukraine, for example, what if Russia invades? Wheat prices are going to go up, and wheat prices went berserk for a while, right? It just went skyrocketed. And if you are a trader down there and you know what's happening, you position yourself properly.
You know what's happening. That's the key. If you're not gambling and assuming, they're playing the what ifs.
You play the what ifs, right? And then you position yourself to make sure that you position yourself before the big wave comes. And then once the big wave crashes, lifts you up, you get out before the big wave crashes, because you all know what, every time the wave crests, it's time for you.
Ebbs and flows.
Bingo, right?
Let me ask you one question that's important to me, because one thing is to build a successful company.
That's right.
Another thing, and make the company make money. When do you pay yourself?
When do you pay yourself? That's a very good question as to, I guess, again, it boils down to every individual is different. But you're absolutely right. It's like, for me, I learned a long time ago that empire building, you can continuously build an empire. You can continuously build, make bigger and bigger, business, build a bigger and bigger business. But not for me, it wasn't at the expense of interpersonal relationship, right? My own. I realized at that time, my daughter she was 11 years old, right? And this is getting a little bit personal, but yeah, she was 11 years old and she had cancer. And so to me, here I am building this big empire, and at the end of the day, there's nothing that I can do. Yes, I can provide money to give her the best care, but there was nothing that I could do to prevent her from getting this, right? And, it's like I say, a variety of things, and that's when it hit hard, right? It's like, okay, so I've been making all this money, and at the end of the day, it's really not for anything if I don't, take responsibility to reconnect with my daughter, for example, or be with people that actually are meaningful to them. All right, and it's all the money in the world is not gonna be able to, again, back to say Elon Musk, for example, right? I mean, he might be the richest person in the world, but is he really happy as a person? I don't know, right? We really don't know. And to me, that became very, very important, right? How to make myself happy and to understand what really makes me happy as a person, instead of, listening to others. And instead of, for you to be happy, you have to be rich, right? It's not all about that, because I see sometimes, like I said, sometimes when I see my employees, they might not be as rich as I am, but hey, for sure, they live a very much more fulfilling life. Their life seems to be full of laughter. Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that says, that's easy for you to say because you're sitting on 9 figures? Well, that's easy for you to say because you're retired, but I'm struggling. What's the comparison there of like, okay, yeah, money isn't ultra important.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I wouldn't say that money is not ultra important. Yeah. But I think once you've accumulated a certain amount of money, I think it's the law of diminishing returns starts to set in. Right?
It loses the value on on the list of priorities. The hierarchy of the value of money goes down.
So for you it's up to you to find out where you want to stop, so to speak. And like I said, for every person it's different, right? But at the end of the day, you just have to ask one thing about yourself, right? Whether you're extremely happy. And then I like to quote, I like to use myself as an example, right? I've seen people who are extremely, extremely wealthy, right? But, they're just not happy in their lives, right? I mean, they don't even have to worry about, money for the next 6 or 7 generations, right? So much money, but nobody likes them. Well, their own family hates them. They're despised by a lot of people. Yes, they're feared and perhaps they're admired because they've accumulated so much wealth. But at the end of the day, when I see them, I feel
sorry.
A little bit sad for them, a little bit sorry for them, simply because, you've got all these monies, you've got all these riches, but, you've at the cost of all of these interpersonal relationships that should mean something to you as you grow.
It's like the Bible says, what does a man gain if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul?
Exactly. Perfectly.
And it's the paradox, and it's that fine tune. As we kind of wrap up, brother, what are some thoughts you leave to the upcoming generation of entrepreneurs? What are some principles that, you know, we've covered, money not being important, but what is something to you that you would like to convey?
Well, I think honestly the AI and the computers and computing in general, right? I mean, I studied computer science last time, and the languages that I learned even 30 years ago is now obsolete. Nobody uses those languages anymore. Pascal, for example, assembly. Who does programming assembly anymore? Nobody does, right? And it's a scary world out there. But the thing about it is never stop learning, never stop reading up on stuff, never to stop traveling, right? Figuring out what other people think. The reason why I love to travel, I think this is probably the same reason as you, is because you are immersed in somebody else's culture. So you look through their eyes about how their worldview is. And because of that, you're a better person. Because of that, because you're able to empathize, you're able to put yourself in their shoes, and you're able to see different points of view, right? And to me, that is always the key right there, is to always continuously learn, never stop learning. Because, you know, and don't convince yourself that, okay, I'm at a pinnacle, this is it. I don't have to learn anymore. I know about everything I used to know about this particular business. That's when you fail. It's all.
That's when the wave comes crashing down.
Correct. Yeah. So, and like I said, there's so many things that you should learn about, right? I mean, not just from an entrepreneurial point of view, other things.
And it cross-pollinates too. Like you were talking about this idea of you spend 20,000 hours working on becoming a better entrepreneur, but do you spend 20,000 hours trying to become a better person that interacts with other individuals and understands how to sympathize?
That's right.
And if you understand how to perceive things differently, you realize that this knowledge actually translates and makes you a better business owner, and it makes you a better entrepreneur. And I've come to realize many times, okay, if you have interpersonal relationship issues, that translates to business.
Exactly.
If you're really good with people, that translates to business. So everything kind of cross-pollinates, and it's not isolated in and of itself. So becoming well-rounded, being educated, and becoming a student of life.
Absolutely.
Brother, thank you
so much. Really
thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this was another episode of Money Talks. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next one.